don't think anybody in this courtroom, Your Honor, can know what it's like to be on the global news wire with text messages to someone that your wife is reading as well. I spent a whole year feeling an enormous amount of guilt for what I did to my wife, my children, and this city. And I still feel it. When I walked out of that jail cell February 4th, 2009, the only thing on my mind was to reconcile with my family. I left the job of being mayor and I went into a prison, my own self-contained jail there, where it was just me for 23 hours. 1 hour a day, I got out for recreation. And if you don't believe that you can go through a revolutionary change after going through that, I don't think we can go through one. But I never lied to this court. I've never willfully violated anything from this court. I'm not that naive to believe that this prosecutor's office was going to continue to stay focused on me. With all this going on, I know still from this day, they're still going to stay focused on me. I'm not naive at all, so every step I took, I thought was the right step, a baby step. February 4th, I walked out of that jail cell. I immediately started having conversations with the probation department. After I found out where I was going to live, I immediately started to do that. I knew what my order said, Your Honor. Your order to me said that I had to pay $1 million over 5 years. But to be perfectly honest with the citizens of this city and county and you, Your Honor, I wasn't thinking about that on February 4th. I was thinking about whether I was going to still have a marriage. After not seeing my kids in 100 days, are they going to still respect me? What kind of role am I going to have in my household after putting them through hell for a year? So in my own hometown, I still feel like a prisoner. In the places I love the most in this country, in this world, the city of Detroit. And so I haven't mentioned anything to the average citizens of the city, who the prosecutor pointed out. The average citizens of the city are my family. I know sometimes when it's looked at through the lens of a camera, it may look one way, and it's not that. I was trying to do something that I didn't have to do, as my wife said. I'm a new guy, and I know that it's a lot of people that don't want to accept that. I want to keep me frozen in time. But when I asked to move on, Jan, I've already moved on. I just want to make it right with this community by doing the last thing that this community asked me to do when I pled to. They asked me to give up my job. They asked me to give up my law license. They asked me to go and serve a 120-day sentence in jail. They asked me to bring $20,000 to court that day. They asked me to stay away from certain individuals. And the last thing they asked me to do was to pay $1 million.
Let it be clear that this entire proceeding was precipitated by the actions of you, Mr. Kilpatrick. You were convicted after pleading guilty to 2 counts of obstruction of justice and no contest to 1 count of assaulting, obstructing a police officer, all because you lied under oath about your relationship with your then Chief of Staff, Christine Beatty. The court doesn't know what your plans were regarding the restitution. However, the court does know that when it determined a reasonable repayment schedule, you balked, feigned poverty, and misrepresented your financial status. This contemptible behavior was in clear disregard of both the letter and the spirit of the court's orders. In reviewing the pre-sentence investigation report submitted by the probation department, This court does not agree with the sentence recommendation of the Michigan Department of Corrections. Sir, you were trained as a lawyer. You served in the state legislature, where you were entrusted to make the law, and you were the chief executive of Detroit, a major U.S. city, charged with enforcing and carrying out the law. In this case, the court strongly believes that to allow a defendant situated as you are to blatantly disregard the orders of this court, a defendant who was a former public official who violated his oath of office in an obstruction of justice case, who desecrates the basic tenets of our system of justice, and seriously undermines the credibility and legitimacy of our legal system, does not fit within the sentence guideline range. Mr. Kilpatrick, you have asked not to be treated any differently than any other defendant who appears before this court. The problem is you are different. You were a public servant, and because of your status as a former high-ranking public official, we expected you to set an example. Yet despite this, you continue to engage in obfuscation and obstruction. You continue to be defiant. And in your letter to this court, you have failed. Actually, it was a letter that was sent to the probation department, which is attached. You have failed to sincerely accept responsibility for your actions. Frankly, your continued attempt to cast yourself as the victim, your lack of forthrightness, your lack of contriteness, and your lack of humility only serve to affirm that you have not learned your lesson. Clearly, rehabilitation has failed. You have not adjusted well under probation. Your testimony in this courtroom amounted to perjury when you stated, "I don't know if my wife works. I don't know the amount of rent. I don't know who pays the bills." Most substantial, most compelling is that you lied to this court. Continue to lie after pleading guilty to lying in court. Obviously, there has been no rehabilitation. You have not changed. So continuing on probation is not an option. You must understand your crime and consequences now. This court is satisfied that the initial 120 days incarceration did nothing to rehabilitate you, Mr. Kilpatrick. Because you have violated probation, you lied in the affidavit, your documents were not fully disclosed, you lied in this courtroom. This court is satisfied that incarceration must now correlate to reflect the above substantial, compelling reasons to deviate. Therefore, you will serve a maximum of 5 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. Further, you will receive credit for the restitution you have paid and the balance of your restitution. $860,000 shall be paid as a condition of parole.